Starting off at number 10, he destroyed Johannesburg. With many comic book stories to pick from, these events can get a little confusing. To start off the list, we go back now to the events of Avengers Age of Ultron, released back in 2015. Now, before Wanda Maximoff was an Avenger, she was getting some dirty work done to help Ultron. Okay, this included playing mind games with the Avengers. So Wanda gets to Banner and he hulks out big time. This time it's very uncontrollable. Now at this point in the MCU, the Hulk has a handle on his Hulk mode, kind of, like he's got it down. After Avengers 1, he was like, I'm always angry, and then he's like standing in the circle with them. He knows what he's doing to some degree, and with the help of Black Widow, she can tippity tap his palm and make him chill out. Black Widow was out of commish this time due to the same mind trick from Wanda, so he ends up going crazy in Johannesburg, and it takes Iron Man and his new Veronica #Hulkbuster armor to come in and knock some sense into him, literally. Now, of course, Wanda was in his head, but none of the other Avengers reacted this way. They just went to places in their mind that brought them a lot of distraught, and they couldn't even fight anymore. They were leveled. So, the Hulk made matters worse, of course, resorting to punching and being, well, a monster. Number 9. He broke Las Vegas. The Hulk was assisting S.H.I.E.L.D. on a mission to clear out some Hydra weapons in the Vegas desert, and after a gamma bomb blew up in his face, he becomes this dark, menacing gray Hulk and begins to terrorize Vegas. The Fantastic Four's Thing comes to help, telling Johnny Storm that monsters understand monsters. Pretty valid point. So Ben goes up to Banner and lays it down. He explains that he knows he doesn't want to hurt anybody else and that he's just messed up, that's all. He continues to offer to help Banner, treatment for the radiation gamma even. And then Hulk responds with, she's dead. Betty Banner is dead and you can't do anything about it. You killed her. And then, bop, he goes crazy. So the people in Vegas see this monster battle happening on the news and they love it? Yeah, they start placing bets. Some guy's like, $50 on the Hulk. Another guy's like, $50,000 on the Hulk. It's wild. Check out Fantastic Four issue 533 for yourself to see how the Green Giant got through that. Number 8, he left the Avengers. Okay, again, we go back to Age of Ultron. So after the final battle on Sokovia, the Hulk decides to just leave. He hops in the Quinjet after tossing Ultron out and decides to just let it keep flying. He ended up going pretty far considering we don't see him at all during the Civil War storyline. It's not until Thor Ragnarok that we meet Banner again, and he has no idea where he is or how long he's been there. Without the help of Black Widow, he can't transform back into his regular, nice Banner body. I have to include this because this is a decision the Hulk made, not Banner. There's a difference. He himself decided that he was just gonna go. Maybe he was done with hurting people. It's actually a massive character arc that people didn't really look into enough. Like everybody came out of the theater like, whoa, Vision and Wanda, I can't believe it. Scepter was actually no way, dude. Hey guys, where's the Hulk? Where did he go? That's the Hulk. Of course he came to the aid in Thor Ragnarok, but maybe if he hadn't gone at all, he wouldn't have fought Thanos when he did, huh? Therefore not losing and becoming unable to get mean and green come Infinity War when you really needed a Hulk. He could have figured it out on Earth. I mean, he figures out the perfect balance by Endgame, so I feel like if he just stuck around, he would have gotten to that point faster. Also, don't leave the Avengers, man. You need the science bros, always. Number 7. Madison Square Up Garden. This next one is pretty wild. So Thor Ragnarok was loosely based off of the Planet Hulk storyline. I say loosely because that story didn't end up going so well. Like the comic book story didn't end well. So on Sakaar, the rocket that he arrived in ended up blowing to smithereens, causing some casualties that left Hulk a little distraught. So what did he do? He heads back to Earth, pissed, and thus begins the World War Hulk storyline. He just murks everybody, all the heroes that Earth has come to love, just in the path of this very angry beast. It's not a good situation. He locks the Illuminati in Madison Square Garden and then makes them fight to the death. I mean, once you spend enough time on Sakaar, I guess it becomes second nature to just battle it out. In the first issue of this series, you see Iron Man in his Hulkbuster armor, and he uses repulsors to accelerate his punch, which is something Iron Man can be seen doing in the MCU. I like when they keep small details like that make these series memorable and awesome, especially the artwork. It looks really cool, and then they insert those into the MCU version of that story. See, even Hulk's design on Sakaar, they really wanted to treat the audience with the same elements that we loved already from the comic book. So make sure if you haven't already to grab all 5 issues of the 2007 World War Hulk storyline, because it's actually a treat and you can plow through it in like a day. Number 6, Old Man Logan. Now, we were all delighted to see an R-rated Wolverine story finally on the big screen with the release of Logan back in 2017. This was loosely based on the story Old Man Logan, written by Mark Millar and Steve McNiven. The film had Logan in the spotlight alongside Charles Xavier and Caliban, and is one of my favorite movies ever. Not even superhero movies, like just as a movie in general. Hugh Jackman is chef's kiss, so good. But in the comics, the story has moments that are even darker than what we saw, believe it or not. Like how about a Hulk gang, for starters? That's right, so in this storyline we find the Hulk as one of the few remaining superheroes on Earth. Now at this point, Banner had decided to breed with somebody like him. Maybe just a little bit too much like him. Like, I don't know, say, his cousin? Yeah, his cousin. So him and Jennifer Walters had an offspring and referred to them all as Hulk Gang, which is a sick nickname for your little ones. Now, if you think that's already twisted and wild, the Hulk Gang actually killed Logan's family. Why? Well, they were bored, of course. What else do you do when you're bored? Do you watch these videos, or do you just murder Wolverine's family? Today you did the right choice. So Wolverine went to exchange a few words with the man, of course, and Hulk ended up swallowing Wolverine whole. What a jerk. Don't worry though, Wolverine used his claws to get out in a rather messy way, killing Papa Banner in the process. Number 5, Statue of Liability. We go now to the Incredible Hulk issue 299. So after the Avengers and everybody decided, hey, the Hulk can finally control himself, let's all be nice, let's give him a statue, reward the man. He earned it. Earth's mightiest hero, we love this guy. Yeah, he's on lunchboxes, so nice. Then in comes the villain Nightmare to ruin the day for the rest of us. So he taps into Banner's subconscious and makes him resort back to the monstrous, uncontrollable ways that he used to be. Again, kind of like when Wanda was messing with his brain in Age of Ultron. So he grabs the statue that was made for him and then just hucks it at Thor. That's hilarious. Like, hey, happy birthday, thanks. Ugh. The Hulk even beats up Banner's girlfriend named Kate Waynesboro, not to be confused with the Wayans brothers. So next time you give your friend with anger problems a statue, just make sure they can't throw it at you. And number 4, train problems. Have you ever been commuting to work and you think, oh, what's taking so damn long? Why isn't this train going anywhere? Well, in a world where these beasts exist in real life, the usual traffic jam would have most civilians' palms sweating. Like if the Avengers were real today, like in our world, I'd be afraid all the time. So many villains, so many problems all the time. Like if I heard a balloon pop in the other room, I'd be like, is it Loki? Are we good? Am I dust? What's going on? Is it happening again, please? So in the Incredible Hulk 122, Hulk has a moment where he kind of ruins an entire locomotive, yeah. He was annoyed by the sound of a passing train and does his version of a rope workout, you know, when those like guys get in the thing and they flick it? He does that, but with a train track. Causes all the cars to fly in the air, like that tablecloth trick, except when your like nephew does it and he doesn't know how to do it yet, so they all just fly off. No passengers were on the train, sure, but I mean, making it rain sidecars, I'm sure that's not the easiest thing to clean up. Number 3, Joe Not Fixit. The Grey Hulk, aka Joe Fixit, is one of my favorite versions of the Hulk. He's like this bouncer in Vegas, and he reminds me of a security guard that I actually used to work with in a bar. His name's Tony. He was awesome. He was like this big, old guy. He's amazing. So naturally, I like this Hulk a lot. The next point made me like him even more. He's a savage. A savage! So he sees his ex-girlfriend, Marlo Chandler, being attacked by a werewolf. So what does this giant, unstoppable monster do upon seeing this? He just stares and considers letting her get mauled. I mean, maybe he's jealous, maybe he's a little bit, I don't know. But I mean, Joe Fixit is this tough, I don't give a shit kind of guy. I mean, come on, this is a pretty dark character arc. A little bit too much, Mr. Joe Fixit. And number 2, killed Tigra. Okay, yeah, this one goes pretty dark. We go now to the 1995 comic titled The Last Avengers story. Now at this point, most of our loved heroes have gotten old and retired. Either that or they've died in battle. Not much is happening in terms of super support. So in the first issue, we find the Hulk in, of course, a fit of rage. Classic. And at one point, he gets his green mitts on Tigra and, oh baby, that's a position you don't want to be involved in. Tigra jumps in like, yeah, we're a team, haha, the Hulk, I can just claw his eyes out as easily as anybody else. And then Banner grabs her and says, hey, make a wish, and pulls her apart. Like one of those holiday finger popper snapper things where you go, yikes, make a wish. Who says that? This guy's messed. And finally, number 1, Hungry Hungry Hulk. To end this list, I thought it was fair to pick the 2002 to 2004 run of The Ultimates, where Hulk is, of course, a cannibal. Mark Millar and Brian Hitch wrote this thing so well that I actually want to see this version on screen more than like any of the latter. So after becoming the Grey Hulk, he ended up eating a bunch of people. He even encounters Iron Man and says the line, line, "Little man smells like canned meat. Hulk wanna know if he tastes like canned meat too." Like, if he said that to me, I would my super suit. I would be like, no, I'm not dealing with this guy, you guys do it. Like, imagine if he said this in the movies, the entire theater would just sit up like, is he about to eat Tony Stank? So since the Grey Hulk incident, he's been locked up, rightfully so, but after Magneto attacks the Ultimates base, they lose power for a little. So during that time, Hulk decides the 6 nursing staff members near him served as a tasty treat, and down the hatch they went. Yum yum.
Number 10. Rune's Xmas. Likely for a lifetime for one unfortunate child, Punisher is disguised as Santa and posing as a man looking to raise funds for charity. When he asks the passing Napolitano family to help the poor, they refuse. He reveals himself and then guns them down, right in front of a child. Horrified, the child asks why, and Frank answers they were naughty. Wow. Well, that kid will fortunately never misbehave again, but it will probably also take years of therapy to undo the damage that the Punisher also just did to his mental health. He's gonna be terrified of Santa for forever. Number 9. Murders Litterbugs. Although this story was later retconned somewhat in an effort to explain away the Punisher's intense and erratic behavior here, when it was first released, this behavior was considered canon. Punisher had recently returned to the streets, condemning them and their inhabitants as being worse than ever. He was out to punish those who caused any harm to others or society in general, which meant zero tolerance for litterbugs. At one point, we watch as he guns down a couple in the rain who discard a soggy newspaper onto the ground they've been using as a makeshift umbrella. Aren't newspapers compostable, Frank? I mean, I guess they take a long time to decompose, so it's still not amazing for the environment, but still. Professing in his internal monologue that littering is a crime, the Punisher fires at the couple, and we see at least one of them topple over in the corner of a panel. Their fate isn't confirmed, but it's definitely heavily implied here that he just killed them for littering. Number 8. Torture Research. Garth Ennis's Punisher story, The Slavers, is widely recognized for being one of the darkest ones out there. While the Punisher seems justified in taking on some of the worst and most horrible people that he's ever gone up against, and you definitely root for him, he also goes to great lengths to deal out his own form of justice here. At one point we see Castle going through medical textbooks just so he can increase his knowledge for enhanced torturing purposes. There are countless violent moments in the story that both feel justified and also make you wince as you see just how far the Punisher is willing to go to punish these people. It should also be noted that this is a mission of vengeance that Frank is actually undertaking not even for himself, but for someone who escaped these villains, a woman named Viroka, and for her baby whom her captors had killed. Number 7. Torturing Barracuda. So Barracuda is admittedly a villain in the comics, but still the way Punisher disposes of villains can sometimes just be so graphic and awful that it leaves you sympathizing with them. That was the kind of fate Barracuda was resigned to, a villain introduced during Garth Ennis's time writing the Punisher and the 2004 Punisher series, which was part of the Max label at Marvel. This Punisher, by the way, is also resigned to another alternate world as well, and honestly a lot of his actions were pretty horrific. So yeah, this is not Earth 616, my friends. This is Max, adult comic stuff. When it came to Barracuda, Castle punished him by connecting some sensitive parts to a car battery and shocking the heck out of him. Later on, he would try to kill Barracuda in an explosion, but only severely burn him. Then he would chop off both his arms and bury a pickaxe in his chest before shooting his head to bits with an AK-47. It's pretty awful, I gotta say. Number 6. Kills off the last humans. During Marvel's The End, Marvel shared with us what various characters would do when faced with the events of and aftermath of the apocalypse. The Punisher was able to track down the last surviving humans, who also happened to be a bunch of jerks who were basically responsible for the events of World War III, which had resulted in this apocalyptic scenario and world that we found ourselves in. They offered the Punisher a choice. He could let them live and they would work to restart the planet and human race using genetic samples, or he could kill them for what they'd done, but you know, then humanity would die with them. Being the Punisher, he decided of course to kill them. Though I gotta say, it definitely sounds like they deserved that, but still, he just like condemned humanity for forever. Now we're gonna be extinct. Number 5. Serves Thanos. If you don't know Cosmic Ghost Rider, I highly recommend checking him out. He's an alternate version of Frank Castle that agreed to become a spirit of vengeance and thereby Ghost Rider. As such, he survives basically the death of all of planet Earth when Thanos comes to raise it in his destruction of the universe, and eventually when everyone else who would stand up against Thanos in the cosmos has been defeated, joins Thanos. He does at least try to stand up to Thanos in the beginning, but in the end kind of goes insane and then sees serving Thanos as really his only option, especially if he doesn't want to be alone, because, you know, it's hard to live forever and be alone forever. It's really sad. CGR helps Thanos to destroy what is left of the universe and remains loyal to the Mad Titan Thanos even when an opponent looms who could actually stand a chance at defeating him, known as the Fallen One, formerly the Silver Surfer, who now also wields the power of Mjolnir. Number 4. Raised Thanos. Or at least he attempted to anyways. This heinous act, which doesn't inherently sound too heinous, truth be told, came to us from the alternate reality that Cosmic Ghost Rider belongs to. Later on in CGR's story, he is granted the opportunity to travel to any time and place that he would like via Odin. This twisted version of Frank chooses to travel back to the moment when Thanos was born. CGR attempts to use his pen and stare on the young baby, who it doesn't work on because, you know, baby Thanos is still at this point innocent and is yet to become corrupted. Although I gotta be honest, does the pen and stare really ever work for Ghost Riders? I feel like I see it fail more times than it works in comics. CGR, instead of killing baby Thanos, decides then to raise baby Thanos himself, hoping to alter the future by teaching Thanos to be good. He later runs into the future version of that baby Thanos, all grown up, and learns that raising Thanos led to an even worse alternate future for Earth, where people are imprisoned by this Punisher Thanos, kept in camps, and killed if they choose to step out of line when it comes to Thanos' plan for enforced peace on Earth. Basically, without meaning to, Frank actually created an alternate reality where living on Earth is kinda like living in hell. Number 3. Executions. While it might not be as bad as condemning Earth to the fate of his adopted son, Punisher Thanos, I personally find this gruesome depiction of the character even worse. This take on the Punisher and his actions comes to us from the 2005 Punisher video game. Here you gotta play as Frank Castle beating up targets to secure key information before executing them. The adults-only rated game was described as having over 100 unique executions for fans to choose from. Wow. The fact that many of these were also super brutal and torturous ways to die only made all of the Punisher's actions here, which you as the player were in control of, even worse. Talk about a glorification of violence. Number 2. Kills the Marvel Universe. In the story Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe, we get a front row seat to watching Frank Castle eliminate literally pretty much every hero, villain, and just about anyone else who gets in his way, as he makes quick work of the entire Marvel verse. As awful as this is, it's also really impressive that Frank, who is admittedly just a human, is able to take out all these superpowered beings so successfully and often efficiently. In the end, after Punisher has eliminated just about everyone there is, one person is left for him to take down, for it to be considered a completely clean sweep: himself. And Frank doesn't even hesitate. Now, what caused all this chaos, by the way? Like in many other Punisher stories, it was the death of his family, which in this reality appeared to have happened while they were caught in the crossfire of a superhuman battle. Number 1. Excuses. One of the worst things about the Punisher is that he tries to make you feel like his actions are justified by using the loss of his family as an excuse. And oftentimes that also works for us readers. Now, I'm not saying that what happened to Frank Castle's family wasn't terrible, because it was. But ultimately, what the Punisher represents is this obsession with violence and the feeling of a never-ending war. Jason Aaron, in his Punisher run, attempted to reveal the veiled truth behind Frank's excuses for continuing this never-ending battle, which honestly Frank himself is likely not even aware of, when he proposed a story with Frank Castle contemplating divorce moments before his family is killed, and also returning home and basically questioning if he actually enjoys life or if he would rather just kill people.
Kicking off the list at number 10, making weapons. Now, of course, we see Tony Stark as the genius billionaire playboy philanthropist, but how exactly did Tony end up with all that cash money? Well, in the MCU, it is shown that Tony is running his father's company, of course being Stark Industries. Founded in 1940 by, of course, Howard Stark, the company is the best at what it does, that being selling innovative weapons to the United States Armed Forces. Ooh, now after being kidnapped by the Ten Rings and seeing the damage that his weapons cause in an up-close and very personal way, he of course seized all manufacturing of the weapons division. But the damage is done. It is later revealed in Avengers Age of Ultron that one of his Stark Industries manufactured missiles killed Wanda and Pietro Maximoff's parents. Not cool, Stark, not cool. Number 9, Hulk's field trip. In the MCU, the Hulk leaves the Avengers and the planet for that matter. See, after tossing Ultron out of the Quinjet, the Hulk lets himself fly away on autopilot, perhaps feeling that he's done too much damage and that his presence is causing more chaos than comfort. Well, in the comics, that basically happens, but it's done with haste. And it's done by none other than our very own Iron Man. So the Incredible Hulk issue 92, titled Planet Hulk, starts off with Reed Richards and Tony Stark talking to a monitor, and that monitor is sending footage to the Hulk in the ship. They explain to the Hulk their trick, which was to send the Hulk away while he was already in space for a previous mission with Fury. They say they've picked his destination very carefully, which is this lush planet full of vegetation and game, no intelligent life forms. Sounds pretty easy breezy for a creature like that, only of course he ends up on Sakaar, which is not that planet. It's very different. He's actually forced to become a gladiator and fight for his life. Now, the Hulk is out of the picture, right? Mission accomplished, we did it. Pew, gone, get that guy out of here. Wrong. Sakaar ends up being destroyed, and the Hulk, well, he's got some names to scratch off his get even list. So he heads back to Earth to find the Illuminati and seek revenge, including on Tony Stark. Number 8, he faked his own death. Iron Man issue 284 has quite an interesting cover. It shows Tony Stark wearing a suit, but like a boring kind of suit, in a casket. Ugh. And the text at the bottom of the page reads, "The death of Anthony Stark." It shows all these superheroes mourning the loss of their friend and fellow Avenger. Even Dr. Doom is like, ah yes, let us drink to the memory of a worthy opponent. Like, you know you're sick if Dr. Doom is like, yeah, cheers, I'll drink to you, that's cool. And to make things even crazier, he writes a note to Rhodey that says, "This keycard will give you full access to the entire complex. Take this CD-ROM disc to my office and play it on the AV system." Wow, nothing says futurist, rich billionaire like, take this CD. It'll help you. Okay, you have to like wipe it off first. Put it in. So he puts it in and clicks play, and it is pretty awesome. It shows Stark explaining that somebody has to carry on for him. The world needs an Iron Man. And bam, you see a suit made just for Rhodey. What a moment. Tony continues to say that Iron Man was the greatest thing that he's ever invented, and he doesn't want it to die with him. Fair. I mean, it's pretty overwhelming for him though. I mean, all that responsibility of being the new Iron Man, plus mourning your best friend, plus figuring out how to run a company, that's a lot of So finally, he suits up and it's epic. Iron Man lives again, but it turns out Tony wasn't actually dead at all, rather just under cryogenic stasis until a scientist sorted out his spinal software problems. Ha! Gotti! And number 7, he created Ultron. Ultron can't see the difference between saving the world and destroying it. Where do you think he gets that? That line is said by Wanda Maximoff in Avengers Age of Ultron. So Tony has created some amazing stuff. All of his suits, his innovative tech. Barf? Barf? That's the greatest thing. This dude knows what he's doing. But what if he created a supervillain? Ooh. So we find Tony and Bruce working on Ultron, right? Or just the idea at this point, rather. See, Tony had this idea since Avengers 1 that if he could create a suit of armor around the world, it would be a safer place, or rather create a robot that kicks ass, essentially. Something that just takes care of threats while the Avengers, I don't know, read a book, relax for once in their lives. Of course, one of the main elements helping them achieve this goal is the return of Loki's scepter. They think by studying the central power unit of the scepter, which ended up being the Mind Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones, they can finally solve this puzzle and be safe. Tony ends up accidentally infusing the consciousness from the Mind Stone into this evil, jealous killer bot that mirrors many aspects of Tony Stark. So Ultron immediately starts to learn about what he is and who the Avengers are, and with his brain being the super AI, he decides they've all just gotta go. And by the end of the movie, we have a horribly damaged Sokovia with roughly 177 deaths. One of those deaths being Charles Spencer, a young American engineer killed in the final fight. Charles's mother ends up confronting Stark in Captain America Civil War, which ultimately leads to, drumroll, number 6, signing the Accords. Captain America Civil War was one of the most highly anticipated MCU movies, and it's pretty easy to figure out why. The two teams going against each other, I mean, even the poster, I was sold. The movie touches base on incidents like Charles Spencer. How many people have died because of the Avengers? I mean, sure, the whole fun is seeing somebody like Stark create this powerful villain and then use his own wit to defeat him with the help of the Avengers. but like an asteroid basically hit Earth. I'm surprised more people didn't die in Sokovia, to be honest. So the government sees this and makes every superhero sign these accords, and Tony Stark is all on board. He wants this to happen. He's pushing it. That way the government can control what they do or where they go. So it's not their name that's on the line. And if you don't sign, you retire. That's the deal. Now, of course, some team members don't agree, like, Captain America, who's all about freedom. Tony basically forced team members to sign up and go against his very own coworker, Steve Rogers. It's wild because we see both these character arcs changed in this movie for the both of them. We see Cap at the start, who wants to be this like team player and do everything by the books, in Captain America, the first Avenger. And now, by his third movie, he's an outlaw because Tony Stark didn't listen to him about Bucky. Now, Stark, when we first met him, he was cocky, he was rich, he wanted to punch his way through all the problems, even spying on S.H.I.E.L.D. the second he entered the helicarrier. But now, Tony wants everybody to sign and work for the government, all because he feels bad about creating Ultron and blowing it out of the sky. If he had never signed and listened to Cap, the crazy plan of Zemos wouldn't have actually worked. The band would still be together, and when Thanos came to Earth, they all would have smoked him before he even got hands of all the Infinity Stones. Ha! Rant over. Number 5. Hashtag engaged. Spider-Man Homecoming was released in 2017 and directed by John Watts. And it's amazing. I mean, this version of Spider-Man, this film version, this is Spider-Man. The older Tom Holland gets, the more and more this dude is gonna become Spider-Man. Like, he's gonna basically do what Robert Downey did with Iron Man. Like, it just works. This is it. We found the casting for this character. Done. Good luck to anybody else who wants to replace these guys. So one thing I hated about Spider-Man Homecoming was the very end of the movie. So Tony has this plan to introduce the world to Spider-Man, the newest Avenger, even showing him this fancy new Iron Spider suit as part of the pitch. Peter Parker, being all coy and smart, thinks that it's just a test and politely declines the offer. He says he would rather be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man just to chill out, So Tony reacts in a great way. He's all for it. He's like, yep, protect the little guys, I gotcha. And then after Peter walks away, we see Pepper Potts emerge from behind him, and in the background you can see all of these reporters and spectators. He really was planning on introducing a new Avenger. Also, after the events of Civil War, really? I always thought that was a weird time to be like, hey, remember on the news when this was a big deal? Well, here to introduce a high schooler with the ability to throw a bus, here's Spider-Man. He even comes with 4 metal arms and instant kill mode. Check it out. Not a great plan, no. So instead of introducing the new Avenger, he has to do something. I mean, those poor reporters, how are they ever gonna get over it? So he grabs an engagement ring and last second he proposes to Pepper Potts. Ah, damn. That's not a bad trick to have up your sleeve. Like, ah, damn, I forgot my school project. Maybe I'll just propose to somebody in class instead. That'll distract them. Number 4, address shoutout. If there's somebody that wants to kill you, odds are you're just gonna stay away from that person, right? Like, you don't just give your address out to the public, let alone, I don't know, a terrorist. So after Happy gets put in the hospital due to one of the Mandarin's attacks on the Chinese theater, Tony Stark decides he's got a few choice words for the man responsible, the Mandarin. Iron Man 3 of course didn't go so well with fans, given that the villain was just a fake out, and a fake out that people were actually really looking forward to seeing. I mean, the Mandarin's one of the coolest villains ever, and instead we got not the Mandarin. We got like a guy who turns red. But in his message to the Mandarin after visiting Happy in the hospital, Tony says how he's not afraid of the Mandarin and he in fact should just die. Pal. Do you ever argue with somebody and then you take it like a step too far and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that? So Tony gives his address to everybody filming. There's a news crew, there are people on their phones. Like, dude, I get you're upset, but come on, use your smart billionaire head. So of course he gets attacked by the Mandarin because he's the Mandarin and that's what villains do. They attack your Malibu mansions. What did you expect? And out of all of the suits Tony has access to, I'm talking his suit in the final battle for Avengers, he has the briefcase suit, the suitcase suit where he's like, out of all these things, no, this guy gears up with a prototype suit. And of course he gets wrecked. That attack sets up the entire film. Could have easily been avoided if you just didn't give your address out on the news. Silly man. And number 3, Superior Iron Man. So we go now to issue 1 of Superior Iron Man. The issue itself starts off mirroring the tech in Iron Man 3 in a way. Tony can control his suit and fight inside of it, but he's not actually in the suit. He's actually laying in a pool, sipping on margaritas. So his new Extremis armor was fascinating. So much so that Tony released it as like the smartphone app. Now this app allowed people to change their bodies using this virus, becoming however they wanted. And it was great, but then Tony does the ultimate power move and says that the app was actually just a free trial, and in order to continue using it, you have to pay 100 smackaroos a day. Honestly, that's not a bad deal. I would pay that to become Iron Man, definitely. I'd be broke. You know what I would do? I would actually pay for the app, and then use the suit to rob banks, and then use that money to pay for the app. I'm a villain. I guess I just realized I'm definitely a villain. Just said it out loud, there we go. Number 2, bad armor. In the Age of X limited series released back in 2011, we find Tony Stark in a rather odd predicament. See, at this point in the series, issue 2 I believe this happens, Tony is infected with this virus that is bonding him to his suit. You ever get like a piece of your sweater stuck to an arm hair and you're like, oh god, what's going on? And then you pull it and you're like, whew, that was close. It's kind of like that, except, you know, way worse. He's even going by the name Steel Corpse, which, I mean, as far as names go, it's pretty good. It's pretty fitting. Now, at this point, he was a mutant killer. It's a long story, but basically when Iron Man went to stop killing these mutants, in like the turning point of the comic, his suit, which was now literally part of him, started to control him against his will. And it's super scary how it looks on the page. Like, he looks so different and sick and gruesome. His body's not doing well at all handling the merge. So his armor starts to take aim at a group of mutants against his will, and he freaks out, begging Captain America to save them in a rather dark way, if you know what I'm saying. So Cap then takes out Iron Man with a shot to the head. Nice move. A little late, I would have done it sooner in this series, but definitely a good call. And finally for number 1, Demon in a Bottle. So the classic storyline that was actually the center of attention for Iron Man 2 back in 2010. So in this movie we find Tony Stark, and at this point the arc reactor in his chest was powered with a palladium core. So time plus usage of the Iron Man suit equals poison. Not great. So we see Tony's life being ran down to the ground. We see his mental health start to decline, and at Tony's party he's hammered, he's peeing in his suit, and then to see a drunk superhero like Tony Stark acting like that, it wasn't random. This idea didn't come out of nowhere. The idea was loosely based on the Demon in a Bottle storyline from the comics. See, this character arc begins with Iron Man issue 120. We see Tony just slamming drinks. The opening shot, we see like 3 mini bottles of gin, and then Tony orders more. And the flight attendant's like, hey, how about a magazine, because it's the middle of the day? And Tony responds with, nope, I'll do another martini. She even tries to cut him off. She tries to cut off Tony Stark. You know how fat that tip would have been? She says, sir, you've had like 3 already, are you sure? And he's like, yes ma'am, I am. Stating that he's drinking for 2, the other of course being his Iron Man persona. That's a lovely sign right there. What happens when you have a superhero who loves slamming martinis? Well, you get Tony flying through the air drunk, spreading toxic fumes all over a crowd. The drunk tank himself even cheated on his girlfriend Bethany. Not cool. The alcohol addiction was of course put to the side for the MCU storyline, thank God. Like, imagine if Tony tried to snap his fingers but he was too drunk. He's like, and I'm so hungry. Can we go home, please? Like, I gotta eat junior chickens right now.
Number 10, didn't have his priorities straight. I won't deny when I originally wanted to come back to the X-Men, I was more focused on running away. I was behaving recklessly as a result, and eventually it got so bad that the rest of the X-Men called me on it. Embarrassing. Storm ended up challenging me for leadership, and she kicked my butt too, unsurprisingly. I might be a great tactician and a master of trigonometry, but you know, these laser eyes that are really portals to another dimension filled with limitless energy, apparently, have nothing on what my teammate Aurora is capable of. And so I was unable to leave and forced to return to my family, with a lot of my fellow mutants judging me for trying to shirk my responsibilities to my wife and child. Number 9, blasted Wolverine because he dropped a truth bomb. Some might see it that way anyways. I, however, feel like Logan was being very insensitive and disrespectful to Emma and I at the time. Wolverine basically saw Emma Frost and I together following one of Jean's many deaths and harshly judged me. What part of the mourning process is this, he asked us. First of all, he barged in on us, then he started accusing me of not mourning properly? Did I overreact by optic blasting him out of a window? Maybe. I don't know why Logan always has to goad me though. Why can't we just have a calm, reasonable discussion about our feelings? It's almost like he wants me to fight him. Number 8, re-establish the X-Force. The X-Force is basically a mutant team for when there are missions that don't really fall on brand for the X-Men. Until we had the Hellions, they were kind of like our mutant Suicide Squad, except mostly made up of heroes instead of villains. But the these were heroes who weren't afraid of killing when needed. The heroes who were more edgy than the rest of us. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a huge fan of the X-Force really, but I can recognize when the team is necessary, and I know when we need to use them and when it's time to bring that kill squad back together. Unfortunately, not everyone agreed with me. Some questioned my motives, while others have been known to judge me for ordering other mutants to kill while keeping my own hands clean of these deeds. Although in my opinion, ordering someone to kill makes me just as responsible, and it still greatly weighs on my own conscience, which I think is what many people forget. Number 7. Used young mutants as weapons. That's a harsh way of putting it. Professor X did a similar thing with all of us, and I guess a part of me was emulating him in a way. Although at least I didn't use a mutant to train other mutants and tell people it was just a danger room as opposed to a sentient being. But anyways, this became a huge controversy when I suggested that New Mutant Oya do what she felt was right when faced with a hard decision. Poor Oya was only 14 years old, and she already felt terrible about the accidental deaths she'd caused when her powers first manifested. So the wording I used there was poor in terms of providing guidance. I truly believed we were almost out of time, and Oya was our only hope, despite Wolverine's pleas that he could still make it in time. As a result, Oya killed members of the Hellfire Club, and everyone labeled me as someone who molded our young recruits into ruthless killers and dangerous weapons. Number 6. Exploited X-23. When we originally took Laura Kinney in, I wanted to utilize her, but Wolverine disagreed with me. We needed to get the X-Force back together. I needed that team. I went to Wolverine and explained why, and he was all for it. Although he did mention the fact that I was keeping it from Emma, which, yes, I'm not proud of. We needed to come up with a roster as the team had disbanded. I suggested X-23. Laura Kinney had been trained as a killer and she was highly skilled. She was perfect. But Wolverine felt differently, that she didn't have the life experience to make that choice if offered. I probably should have talked to Wolverine earlier about it, but I'd already offered Laura the spot and she'd accepted. I wanted to utilize her, but Wolverine saw it as me using her. Number 5. Cheated on Jean Grey. So originally I was personally all about Jean Grey. She was perfect for me, I thought, but I don't know. Even I have come to see that Emma, might actually be a better fit for me in the long run. Still, with that being said, it was pretty terrible how that whole thing started. Emma and I were having a psychic affair behind Jean's back. What's worse, I also may have had Emma dress up and emulate Jean within our minds. I mean, she was more the one who offered that, but still, she even changed her hair color. Yeah, it was not good. And what's worse, I knew it was wrong and yet I still went along with it. Eventually, Jean found out, telepathically walking in on Emma and I together. Definitely not a moment I'm proud of. Number 4. Almost made the Skrulls extinct. This one made the cut? Really? I feel like I was at least a little justified here, but I guess I could see how this might seem pretty bad, especially as, yes, not all Skrulls are evil. During Secret Invasion, however, I was desperate. I wasn't sure we'd make it, and so I had to take some pretty severe action there. The plan I came up with was to use the Legacy virus as a template to create basically a Skrull version of that virus. A version that targeted and wiped out Skrulls. Now, this worked well, but maybe a little too well, as the Skrull alien race was then kind of at great risk overall because of the virus. Which, yeah, I feel kind of bad about that part. Number 3. Made out on Jean's grave. I mean, this whole storyline was really a strange one. This happened because Jean's psychic ghost told me that it was okay and basically gave Emma and I her blessing after she died. Jean had apparently learned of an alternate future where everything went haywire because I wasn't fit to lead the X-Men, and hoped that me finding happiness would be a good way to prevent this from coming about. Emma and I could have been a little more tasteful though, perhaps, when it came to the location in which we chose to express our feelings for one another. In retrospect, Jean's grave was probably not a good place for a makeout session. Number 2. Killed Professor X. Wow, okay. How can you really blame me for this one? I wasn't even myself at the time, must I remind you? So basically what had happened at this point was the Phoenix Force had returned to Earth during Avengers vs. X-Men. It had taken hold of 5 of us after Tony Stark split it up. Divided, the power was manageable to hold on to, but it also made it easier for the Avengers to defeat us. Slowly, those who were part of the Phoenix 5 were defeated and fell away. I was one of the last people to hold onto the power, which meant, yeah, I kind of flew off the handle, and yeah, I kind of stole that last power from Emma Frost. The professor tried to talk me down and I just was not having it, so I took that power and I killed him. But after Afterward, I felt really bad about the whole thing, and even agreed that I needed to be basically put under arrest for my crimes. I didn't feel good about that one either, although some may have believed that Professor X had it coming. Number 1. Abandon his family. Okay, this is probably in retrospect one of the worst things I've done in the comics. After Jean died, I never thought I'd love again, until I met Madeline Pryor. Maddie was something else, and what's more, she weirdly resembled Jean. Like, we're talking almost identical. For a while, I thought she actually might be the reincarnation of Jean's soul, but then I thought, nah, that's silly. She probably has no relation to Jean whatsoever. We got married, had a son together, everything was going great, then Jean came back from the dead. Or she wasn't really ever dead? Anyways, it's all very confusing. Either way, she was back, that was all that mattered, so I returned to the X-Men, which kinda meant abandoning my wife and son in Alaska. Yeah. Maddie didn't take it too great, especially after she learned she was actually a clone of Jean Grey made by Mr. Sinister for the sole purpose of mating with me. She got pretty evil and ensorcelled my brother to boot, and my leaving was a big motivation for her transformation from innocent bystander to evil sorceress whose powers mirrored and were on a similar scale to Jean's.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Hush. Dr. Thomas Elliot was a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne's. Their upbringing, however, is just a touch different. See, Tommy tried to kill his parents so he could inherit their fortune, but unfortunately that didn't go as planned. But because Bruce's father, Thomas, was so great with his hands, surgically he was able to save them. So he of course became the masked villain, Hush. He spent his years working up ways to get revenge on Bruce Wayne, even getting help from, of course, Red Hood. Now of course he knows quite a bit about Bruce, so Red Hood's job was to mess with Bruce's head. That version of Red Hood ended up being seen as Clayface, because he wasn't ready to reveal himself to Batman just yet. So while the Riddler's mind was enhanced in the Lazarus Pit dip, he figured out who Batman was. But of course Jason Todd gave him confirmation. And before we go on to number 9, if you haven't already done so, make sure to hit that like button, because it helps us out here at the studio quite a bit. Now moving on to number 9, Joker Beatdown. See, usually when a main character dies in a comic book or a movie, the rest of the film just shows the other lead gearing up for revenge. In Jason Todd's case, death was not the avenging action to make. See, after the Joker had killed Jason Todd, Batman didn't kill the Joker. Now, of course, his one rule holds him from doing that, but in this case, is it warranted? Red Hood believes so. In fact, he ended up kidnapping the Joker and torturing him, even giving Batman an ultimatum. Kill Jason, or let Jason kill the Joker. The beating itself is just beautifully awful. Number 8, Arkham Knight. Fans rejoiced when the 2015 Arkham Knight game was announced. We loved the series since Arkham Asylum, back in 2009. Wow, 11 years ago. Get out of town, I feel sick. Are we all getting old? Are we just old now? Is that it? But when it comes to Arkham Knight, this was one of my favorite video games of all time. Not even just saying that. So of course I have to include it in this list. The villain in the game was of course the Arkham Knight, who was revealed to be Jason Todd. Now instead of dying at the hands of Joker, he was being held hostage and driven insane, eventually becoming one of the hardest villains I've played in a superhero game. So he sports the new outfit and conflicts chaos for the 17-hour gameplay. That's around 45 hours for the 100%ers. I got to like 42 hours, I couldn't do it, it was too much. The Riddler trophies? Get out of town. Who has the time? If you haven't already played it through, there's a few alternate endings. So make sure if you do play, you really try and collect everything, because those alternate endings are creme de la creme. Number 7, The Last Crusade. We go now to the 2016 Dark Knight Returns, The Last Crusade, written by Frank Miller and Brian Azzarello. So off the bat, readers see Candy Forsythe and Len Wright on Good Morning Gotham. They rejoice over the fact that the Joker has been taken into custody again, but this time they look at Robin as he's just a boy. They even use the words child endangerment when referring to him taking down the Joker. See, Jason Todd's methods are shown quite to be violent. After a chase with Joker's hitmen, Batman disables their van. Stupid, ignorant amateurs, Batman says as he tries to drag them free of the flaming van. He could smell gasoline, so he encouraged Robin to hurry with taking them out of the non-reinforced van. Maybe his version of taking them out is a bit different. See, one of the punks pops his head out, but shortly after his head is stomped on by Jason. And the issue even highlighted how the punk's blood steamed and bubbled on the hood. Looks like a pretty red hood, if you ask me. The issue goes on to show how Batman feels responsible for the methods in which Robin takes down these bad guys. Batman even saying, "This is what I trained him to be, a ruthless killer." And this is when Jason decides to handle some Joker business on his own. Number 6, Philippe Garzona's death. In Batman issue 424, The Diplomats Son, we see Robin take matters into his own hands. Ranked number 28 in Wizard magazine's list of 100 best single-issue comics since you were born, The Diplomats Son has one of the darkest title page illustrations I've seen. So we see a not-so-smiley Robin pushing somebody off of a building. And judging by the size of the cars down below, it's not the kind of push we saw from The Dark Knight. Now, the victim was a not-so-great guy by any standards at all, the victim being Philippe Garzona. See, after avoiding a sexual assault and battery charge, a lot of readers actually enjoyed Philippe's fate, considering how bad this guy is. After Philippe fell to his death from his penthouse suite, Batman swoops in and asks the pressing questions. Did he fall, or was he pushed? And Robin simply replied with, I guess I spooked him. He slipped. And Batman is left standing there thinking about what had just taken place and why. And number 5, Earth 51's Joker. Now, halfway through this list, we're thinking maybe he's a bit of a troubled soul. Well, in the Final Crisis event, we see one of the craziest things ever. On Earth 51, that is. Jason Todd was sent to find Ray Palmer across the multiverse, and during his travels, he met the Batman from that Earth 51, who at this point was a bit different than our classic Caped Crusader. See, Earth 51's Batman was this badass murderer after Jason Todd's death. So after he was given a fancy new red suit, that Batman was murdered by the Joker and other multiverse characters. So our Jason Todd decided to kill Joker by using a rock to his head. Holy sh**. I mean, in all fairness, he was laughing at that Batman's dead body, so kind of warranted? I don't know. It's a rock. Number 4, Jason and Grayson. Following Infinite Crisis, DC released a comic in 2006 titled 1 Year Later, which, as you would guess, shows where our heroes and villains are exactly a year afterwards. So Dick Grayson moves to New York, and then he sees that Nightwing is there. And he's taking care of criminals. Like taking care of them, you know? With a little side of death in there, just sprinkled in, you know, just some punches and some death. The suited up Dick Grayson is then approached by the fake Nightwing, who turns out to be none other than our Red Hood, Jason Todd. So of course they scrap it out, and Dick Grayson is knocked off a building, with Jason Todd of course preaching how much more the city of New York liked his take on the Nightwing mantle. The pair end up fighting again for the second time, and Jason Todd wins again. The two ends up teaming together, but seeing Red Hood steal Nightwing's mantle and kick some serious ass, that's one for the books. Number 3, he stole some tires. Jason Todd was given a darker origin after the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline. This time we see him introduced to Batman as a criminal, which does make a lot of sense considering the horror stories I just told you about. So Batman catches him while he was stealing tires. Doesn't sound too bad. I mean, now's the time for winter tires to be put on anyways. No, these tires belong to the Batmobile. Yikes. So Batman wasn't too upset. In fact, he was kind of impressed. See, the Batmobile isn't an easy target. I mean, there are security systems in place to avoid a situation like being left with no tires at the beginning of a mission, which would be hilarious. This got the attention of Batman, unfortunately. Who knows, if Batman didn't catch him, maybe he would have turned out differently. Maybe he would have had a different upbringing. Just like as a petty thief rather than, you know, Red Hood. That would be a great alternate issue though. Batman's like, I'm on my way, and then he just sees this car with no tires. He's like, okay, I'll be there in like 42 minutes. Damn it! Number 2, Robin vs. Robin. Imagine getting dumped and your significant other dates somebody that's just like you but better in all the right ways. Isn't that brutal? And to make matters worse, imagine if you saw them and they were wearing your clothes. Like, what if this dude had on your hoodie? That's crazy. The disrespect. So after Jason Todd's return, he of course was not a fan of the new Robin, Tim Drake. And to show who the real Robin is, Jason decides to beat the hell out of Tim Drake. He even took down the other Titans in the process. Even though Tim may be the better detective and better trained than Jason, anger really is something else. And finally at number 1, the Poison Prison Blues. So while Tim Drake held the mantle of the Caped Crusader, Jason Todd was being held in Arkham Asylum. In Batman's words, it was for his own protection. So after explaining to Batman that he had passed all the tests numerous times, the psychological tests, he was transferred to a regular prison in Gotham. Now at this point, there's tons of criminals that want a piece of Jason Todd. Jason decides he's had enough of the incoming threats and poisons the cafeteria, killing 82 and sickening about 100 more. That's one way to take out all of your haters. Geez, it kind of reminds me of that scene from Watchmen with Rorschach. Number 10, the football game. To kick off this list, pun intended. We go back to the golden age of comics with Jay Barrick to Flash Comics issue 1. So back in the 50s, the issue opens up with Jay trying to get the attention of Joan, but she's not interested, all because he sucks at football. In her words, she even says, "A man of your build and brains could be a star." Both tridents hurt. Oh no, whatever shall we do? Haha. And then in comes the super speedster just to ruin the game for the rest of the guys who've trained for like 16 years of their life to get there. And I love how happy he is too at this moment. Like he's clearly been waiting for this his entire life. Like he just flies through touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. One guy on the other team has the right idea. He straight up quits. And the game ends being 65-30. I mean, save some action for the rest of us, Jay. We warmed up for like 2 hours, come on. And before we move on to number 9, guys, if you haven't already, please give this video a thumbs up. It helps us a lot here, and it's right there. It's right somewhere down there, it's that one. It looks like a hand with a thumb, it's hard to miss. All right, thank you, now back to the list. Number 9, Super Kids. Nothing beats a family outing. Either that means a trip to the movies or battling monsters with your super kids. That's right, once Wally West and his family returned from a fun little Speed Force trip, his kids had powers. How fun. Now, being so young, there's the Incredibles type question. Should they be allowed to be superheroes? Well, in The Flash Volume 2, issue 233, Wally comes up with the mindset that speedsters age differently. And sometimes it's hard to understand how much longer they have to live. So Wally thinks it's best to let them do what they want because YOLO, am I right? And it's a pretty cute issue. Like the kids are eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, trying to fuel up for the fight. In the first few pages, Iris even admits that she stole the sandwich from a fat kid, so everybody wins. Those are her words, not mine. God, I should add another point to this list just for that line. What a savage. Number 8, the loop of life. Everybody has that one memory they wish they could just delete from their brain. Like maybe you were late for work and then you spilled your coffee all over your lovely flannel shirt. Now, what if you had to relive that nightmare over and over, Groundhog Day style? Well, that's what happens to Zoom. In Flash issue 200, Wally West uses his powers to defeat him, but he freezes him and makes him repeat the worst day of his life over and over and over again. Now, this is why I want to be a speedster. This issue right here. I would love to do this. I would just make everybody chill out in their favorite memory and just kind of lay low. Maybe a couple I'd put in some embarrassing memories, you know? Of course, I mean, I'm a human. Like he looks like he's in so much pain, you could just tell by the dramatic one teardrop. This is literal hell that he's in. He just sits and repeats the line, "He doesn't have a gun, trust me, Ashley," over and over. Poor Hunter Zolomon. I mean, he's not the best guy in the world, but you can't help for feeling somewhat bad. I mean, he's a human. And number 7, more mind games. Yes, of course, we go back to that same issue, Flash 200, where he puts forth this amazing plan to mess with everybody's mind. So now at this point, the Flash thinks, you know what, it's probably best if everybody just forgets who he is. Not too bad of an idea. So he gets some help from the Spectre and Hal Jordan. They talk it out, and Wally figures if he mind wipes everybody, all will be good. Bang bang, boom. Well, Wally ends up forgetting who the Flash is as well, for a short amount of time. So with everybody not knowing about the Flash causes the opposite reaction. There's more crime. No speedsters in the way. Heh, let's go rob some shit. And number 6, death is cool. Flash Comics issue 1, this time it's in the shape of Jay Garrick. So Flash decides it's a smart idea to go and attack a group of villains. Now at this point it's early in the comics and he's just now buckling down with the responsibilities of his new powers. So he goes, I'll go after them, let's do it. So what does he do? He ends up in a chase with a villain named Sir Satan. Cool name. And then he runs his car off the road, literally runs it off the road. Then there he was in terrible shape in the burning car, and Jay, furthermore wanting to take on the superhero responsibilities, decides not to help, but to rather just look cool. Like at least collect his teeth off the dashboard first, you know? Fix his hair, maybe ask him if he needs a band-aid or two. I get it though. If I took down a supervillain, I'd probably talk some shit. I'd do monologues. I would do like Shakespeare monologues while he's burning in his car. And number 5, Prison Break. We go now to the Flash 164 from 1987, and the cover of the page shows Flash being put in the slammer. Ooh, the Flash is stuck in this mirror dimension where he doesn't exist, so there's a lot of questions floating around for the Flash. Now, instead of using his super speed to exit the station and figure out a game plan, he super kicks everybody's ass. I mean, this world thinks that all superheroes are evil. Way to prove their point right off the bat. The Flash even says, I gotta keep my cool, no matter where I am, I'm not gonna scrap with police. And then he immediately hoofs one of them in the jaw, breaking the shield guard on his mask. Number 4, ignoring a call for help. Flash 89 in 1994 Volume 2, Wally West was involved in a civil lawsuit. The plaintiff, Allison Armitage, was injured so badly while Wally was out kicking ass that she ended up having to get her legs amputated. That's how bad this ended up. Now, as if that wasn't bad enough, she said Wally West ignored her when she cried out for help. That of course caused her injury. She wanted $20 million for the whole case. Allison's lawyer was none other than the villain Abracadabra. So Wally thinks that there's something fishy going on, and the Barry Allen Foundation made an agreement that Wally can't use the Flash outfit or persona. Quite the punishment if you ask me, jeez. You're grounded, bucko. But don't worry, him and Allison come to an agreement in the next issue, but regaining the ability to walk was not included in said agreement. Now the best part of this issue has to be the court scene. The Flash goes nuts. He's asked if he did everything he could, and he's like, I'm fast as lightning. And they're like, yes, but did you do what you could? And he's like, I'm super fast though. I don't know. And number 3, killed Reverse Flash. Flash issue 324, we have the Trial of the Flash storyline, and the cover of the issue is enough to make you want to pick it up and take a peek. We find Barry as he sets for holy matrimony with Fiona Webb. Now, leading up to what's supposed to be the happiest day of your life, Reverse Flash starts leaving creepy messages for Barry. One message literally spells out in big letters, "Guess who's gonna kill your wife again?" with a question mark that looks like a 2. Maybe he's going too fast, couldn't do it. Yeah, Reverse Flash had done that previously, but this time, he doesn't just punch him in the head a few times and talk smack. No, this time he changes it up a bit and breaks his neck. And afterwards, Barry was arrested. The police officer comes in and literally says, "Oh, I don't like the angle of that neck." Like, how many, he's like, "Hey, I've seen some necks in my time, rookie. That's a bent neck." I sleep on this neck quite funny, so whenever I see bent necks, I'm always like, ooh, I feel like the bent neck lady. Now, of course, it was an accident, but it still happened, and it's still pretty violent, so you gotta include it. And number 2, immobile inertia. So at the start of this video, I mentioned the name Bart Allen. Bart is the grandson of Barry Allen. Now, at this time, there's nobody like Barry or Wally to take the mantle of the Flash. He skipped the whole teenage years thing and went right to being an adult. Speedsters are wild, thus becoming the Flash for a small amount of time. Because the evil speedster Inertia, aka Thaddeus Thawne, killed Bart Allen. This evil clone of Bart Allen is responsible for him being gunned down. So when Wally West returned, he was pretty angry. But instead of killing him, he freezes Inertia, making him this sentient statue, and added to the Flash Museum, just blinking and breathing for eternity. Of course, staring at Bart Allen the whole time. Quite the punishment, I like it. I'm here for it, as the kids would say. And finally, number 1, Flashpoint. One of the biggest upcoming DC movies, and for good reason, the Flashpoint storyline, where the Flash tries to go back in time to save his mother from dying her tragic death. Not a bad idea at all. I'd probably try and do that too. This story was released in 2011, written by Jeff Johns and Andy Kubert, and starts with Barry waking up with no Flash powers. Interesting. In fact, the Flash doesn't even exist. Everything has changed. His mother, Nora, was still alive. Score! And his father, Henry, died 3 years prior. Not score. Yeah, in his own timeline, his father's actually alive. He's just in jail. There's no Justice League at this point, and Superman isn't even in the picture. The best part? And one plot point that we're most looking forward to is that Batman in this universe is actually Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne's father. So Bruce ended up dying that night instead of his parents. So this caused his mother Martha to go insane, and then she ended up becoming the Joker, and that's why during the opening credits of Batman vs Superman, we're all hyped in the audience because we see Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Lauren Cohen, 2 amazing actors in such a small opening scene with no dialogue. Interesting. Now, with recent news of Michael Keaton set to return in that storyline, Jeffrey Dean Morgan took to the internet and said, "Michael Keaton swooped in and took my gig." Nah, I think that's super cool. Ever since Zack Snyder walked away, my whole kind of bit in that world has walked away with him. However, there's always a chat going on. God, I hope Jeffrey Dean Morgan would be the best dark Batman. Like, we've kind of been waiting for a long time. Just do it, just do it. So we shall see, fingers crossed. I think that movie's coming out June 2nd, 2022. For now, I mean, let's all wear masks. Maybe we'll see it sooner. Just an idea.
Number 10, threaten children with a gun. Okay, Selena was also just a kid herself here when this one happened, but that also makes it almost even worse. While thinking back to how her sister Maggie was tortured and driven insane by being fed pieces of her husband who was tortured and killed by Black Mask, she also thinks back to other times she had failed Maggie. One such instance occurred when Selena stole costumes for her and her sister. She lied to Maggie, telling her the shop owner had said that they could borrow them. What she also didn't tell Maggie was that she also had stolen a gun. The gun was real, real, and later in the night Selina used it to threaten some kids who were bullies and who were threatening a boy with a knife. Maggie was so upset when she found out her sister had stolen the costumes and the gun, and told Selina they should have asked a grown-up for help, as Selina could have killed someone if the gun went off. Selina dismissed her sister, saying she didn't care if she killed someone. That is cold, Selina. Also, you're just a kid! Number 9. Pickpocket. Selina started out as a thief at a young age. Depending on her origins, she was either forced into stealing for the woman who ran the orphanage she ended up in after her parents' death, or she escaped the orphanage she was mistreated in and turned to a life of theft in order to feed herself. In fact, originally it was because of her youthful attempt at pickpocketing that she ended up working and training with a carnival. And this is where Selina developed her nimbleness, sleight of hand, and gymnastics skills. While she had to pickpocket to survive, it's still not good to steal from people just because you can or you need to. And Selina started down this path of thievery from a very young age. And before we continue on to this next point, just a quick reminder to click that like if you haven't already. It really does help us out here at the channel. Number 8. Humiliated Azrael. During the Night Quest story, Azrael has stepped into the role of Batman, filling in for Bruce after his back was broken by Bane and he had to focus on healing. Jean-Paul Valley can't fool Catwoman though. She recognizes that there is someone else beneath the mask other than her sometimes beloved Bruce. She thwarts the law and escapes Azrael's clutches, shouting to the world as she gets away for all of Gotham and the GCPD to hear that this Batman is a fake. Ooh. That has gotta hurt the ego. Number 7. Making her mark. Back in her early days when Selina was still putting together her costume and learning how to fight, she incorporated claws into it. On one occasion she was inspired when seeing the damage her claws could do, to leave a mark on her victims. Her calling card for a time would then become clawing the face of her enemies. Those who opposed Catwoman and lived to tell about it as such would always be reminded of her by the scars her claws left on their face. Number 6. Hellhound. In issue 36 of the 90s Catwoman series, Catwoman refuses to kill her enemy Hellhound, but instead leaves him tied up in the desert, and all alone. She knows he'll likely escape and doesn't want to kill him. Actually, refusing him death is even worse for Hellhound, who has only ever wanted Catwoman to do just that, to kill him. Hellhound believes if Catwoman kills him, it will actually allow him to be reborn as a true Hound of Hell. Alas, she never gives him the satisfaction. Leaving someone tied up in the desert, too, without any sure means of escape is pretty cruel, even if they are a villain. And while this is one of the worst things Catwoman does in this issue, Bruce also commits his own crime by having that 90s ponytail. No one is without guilt in the 90s. There were just lots of terrible things that happened. Number 5. Killed Black Mask. But I mean, come on, he kinda deserved it, right? Still, in a world where Catwoman had been attempting to be a hero, this was a big one. This was around the time that Selina had a crisis of conscience after learning her decision to become a hero had actually not been her own, but had been implanted in her mind by Zatanna's magic. This caused Catwoman to return to the dark side once more and question her alignment and actions. When confronting Black Mask after he targeted Selina, focusing on making her life and the lives of her loved ones a living hell, she decided to call his bluff and shoot him point blank in the head, killing him. Roman had expected Catwoman to come after him, but he never thought that she'd kill him, considering she was more of the hero than villain type. Boy, did he pick the wrong time to press his luck. Number 4. Earth 2. While in certain continuities this can be considered a different version of Catwoman entirely, in her early days in the comics Catwoman was much more villainous and ruthless than the version of her we've come to know. This earlier version of the character would kill those who got in her way without much consideration for the severity of her actions. At one point she allowed an ambassador to be mauled to death by a leopard. This was during the time when she wore a cat mask to hide her true identity, which honestly was a look. It reminds me of the Cats live action film, which was something. It was an experience. Number 3. Became a crime lord. For a while Catwoman actually left her mantle of the cat, becoming someone new, though equally if not more villainous at times. In New 52, Selina was revealed to be the daughter of Rex the Lion Calabrese, who was revealed to be at one time one of Gotham's kingpins. Selina reached out for advice after initially rebuking his offer to take over his criminal empire, becoming a mob boss herself. While she was a mob boss, she often looked impeccably good in suits while committing some of the worst crimes, including constant thefts and kidnapping. However, at least Selina was originally drawn to become a crime boss for good reasons. She believed that Gotham needed a sense of order and sought to stop some of the overt gang violence by seizing control. Number 2. Making out with Nightwing. During a heist no less. Also, Catwoman's depiction in this whole issue of Nightwing is something. It's very interesting. One of the most talked about shocking moments within issue 52 of Nightwing Volume 2 is when Nightwing and Catwoman have a makeout session, which obviously Selina instigates. This also happens in the same issue where she has a dream about being married to Batman. Ew, Selina, that's like making out with your adopted son. You just had a dream that you were married to Batman. What are you doing? Don't do that. Stop it. What's worse is at the end of this issue, it's all implied that this is all a part of a ploy of Catwoman's to make Batman jealous. I have no words. Number 1. Leaving Bruce at the altar. Finally, Tom King was going to deliver on a story that had felt like it had been coming our way forever. Batman and Catwoman were finally going to be married and tie the knot. They had told the Bat Kids, planned an opulent though intimate event, and the day had finally come. But while these two have always seemed to be fated to be together, Selina started to have some doubt, planted by her friend Holly Robinson. As a result, Selina ends up leaving Bruce at the altar, breaking his heart. In the end, it was revealed that this was actually all a part of Bane's ultimate plan to finally break Batman for good, and it was definitely a pretty effective attempt at starting off that process. Number 10 was a criminal. Yep, remember that time Lois accepted bribes to delay a story and used her bribes to buy fancy clothing, then got found out and was sent to prison pending her trial? No? Well, that's likely because although that all did happen, in the end it was revealed that it was all part of a plot that was arranged between Lois and Superman to nail some crooks. Lois pretended to accept the bribes, working alongside the authorities simply to get closer to the head honcho and help Superman and the police capture him. He was the one to help break her out of prison, hoping to intimidate Lois and recapture the evidence she supposedly had on him. Unfortunately for him, Superman crashed the party, following the escape vehicle to his hideout. The authorities arrested him and Lois got rewarded with a fur coat for her troubles. But still, she looked pretty guilty through a lot of it. You only find that out at the end, so if you read like 70% of that story, you're gonna be like, what is happening? Lois, stop accepting these bribes. Number 9. Won a Pulitzer. Lois has won many Pulitzers across multiple universes and alternate realities, and while this might not initially sound like such a dark thing to have happened, in the film Superman Returns we learn just what story won Lane her esteemed prize. The subject? How much the world doesn't actually need heroes like Superman. I love how against the original concept of the character this is, while also kind of coinciding with it. Lois originally was a woman obsessed with Superman to the extent of even focusing more on him at times than pursuing the best story. But in Superman Returns she is both fixated with Superman, but not in a lovey-dovey you must marry me type way, not with this story. The title of her piece that won her the prize was Why the World Doesn't Need Superman. Of course, by the end of the film, Lois has kind of changed her mind and writes a piece about why the world does need him. But her first piece still stands. Also, her first piece won the Pulitzer, and the second one, I don't know if she won a Pulitzer for that one. I think they were like, we don't like this one as much. Can you win multiple Pulitzer prizes anyways? Like once you've won one, can you still win more? I think you can. Number 8. Lied about her age. In one continuity, Lois was raised to be tough as nails by her military father, who had wanted sons but ended up with daughters, Lois and her younger sister Lucy. Already instilled with a hard-working ethic when she was just 15, Lois attempted to apply for a job at the Daily Planet, while her father was stationed in Metropolis, where her family was also temporarily living. She lied in an attempt to get hired, claiming to be 19. Lucy rats her out, but Lois ends up securing the job anyways, even though she is too young to be employed there. She's only 15, when she manages to sneak into Lex Luthor's building and steal some files. Also, the rest of that issue is super weird. When Lex catches her, it's weird. I think he spanks her. I think that's like her punishment. He's like, I'm gonna spank you, that'll teach you, young Lois Lane. And then he's like, I hope I meet her in 10 years. And I'm like, that's creepy, Lex. Don't stop that. Stop it. Number 7. Impersonated an actress. In the first issue of Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, Lois impersonated the world-famous French actress Lois Laflamme. She did so to get a big scoop on an ambassador who refused to meet with the press. Back in her early days, Lois was always pulling crazy stunts like this, but this time her act was so convincing and deemed so deceitful by Superman that when he found out about it, he intervened to get back at Lois. Of course, Superman was also kind of being a huge jerk in this issue, as he usually is in this comic, but yeah, both Lois and Superman are they're really always awful to one another at times in this series, as well as everyone around them. Also, Lois does a terrible French accent to impersonate Laflamme, effectively mocking her while impersonating her. How rude. Like, she even acknowledges that it's a bad accent. She's like, I'm gonna do this terrible French accent to impersonate a real French person. That's so insulting. Number 6. Got between Robin and Batman. In an imaginary story, Lois Lane ends up dating Bruce Wayne, falling in love with him, and marrying him. Superman nor Clark Kent refuses to get in between them as he feels that marrying Lois would actually put her in too much danger. So he's like, I guess I'll just let this happen, I guess I'm fine with it. Super not fine with it. Which is the same excuse actually that Superman feeds Lois for years in the comics while she remains weirdly obsessed with him and marriage. She's like, marry me, and he's like, it'll be too dangerous, and she's like, okay, but you always say that. Give me a better excuse. No, he's only got one excuse. He doesn't want to marry you, Lois, get over it. This is obviously not the Lois we know today, who is a hard-hitting reporter and a more intellectual, career-focused woman. After Lois marries Bruce in the story, she finds out he's Batman, and subsequently, while she and Batman appear to be living happily ever after, isolates Batman's greatest ally, Robin. Her closeness with Bruce causes him to kind of give Robin the cold shoulder, and when the pair have their first child, it's also made apparent to Robin that Batman seeks to have his natural-born son become the heir to the Batman mantle, as opposed to his pal Robin. Harsh. Poor Robin. He's like, but I thought I was like your first son. Batman's like, you're not really my son though. You're just a kid that lives with me. Don't get too attached. Number 5. Poses as a man's dead wife. This story, in all, was pretty awful, but also Lois did help in a weird way. First of all, Lois is sent on a journalist job by Perry White to go undercover to get the scoop on a famous horror film star, Carlos Floyd, and his new wife, Edna Van Cleve III. Lois and Clark are both sent to pose as a maid and a butler, respectively, on Skull Island, where the new couple have just moved. Also, just all of these stories where they're like, we're just gonna pretend to be someone to like infiltrate and get a story because people don't want to talk to us. I'm like, this is bad journalism. Like, I don't think you're allowed to entrap people like this. However, Lois starts to suspect that Floyd may have killed his new bride while she is there, but is making it appear as though she is still healthy and alive for some reason. She dresses up as his dead bride in order to spook him and hopefully prompt him to confess his guilt. However, it turns out that Floyd actually isn't the guilty party. It was Sydney Willis, Edna's lawyer, who was to blame. In fact, Floyd had been making her appear alive in an attempt to catch the true culprit. So he was trying to actually do that with his whole thing. Fortunately, Lois also aids in this, and Willis is apprehended and confesses, but this was a pretty risky move on Lois's part. Like, she was just like, I'm pretty sure he did it, so I'm gonna traumatize this man. And I'm sure it was somewhat traumatizing for Floyd to see her impersonating his wife in the photo that he captured of her until all of this was revealed. And he found out that his wife, wasn't like a ghost trying to haunt him. Be disturbing. Number 4. Ruined a space rocket launch. This is a wow one. I can't believe this happened. As I said earlier, Lois always is so determined to get that scoop. She'll just do about anything. When it comes to reporting on a space rocket, that means faking a fainting spell in order to find a way inside it prior to the launch. No one was allowed inside the rocket, but when she fainted, apparently this was the only place she could be taken to rest. I would like to question if this makes any sense. I'm just imagining that one guy at the launch site just carrying her all the way up the elevator and the flights of stairs to put her in the rocket. Like, that's a long way up you have to go, my friend. Surely there's gotta be like a car or something nearby that they could have put her in. But no, apparently the rocket is the nearest place for her to be safe. Also, you shouldn't even be putting her in there. Whatever, it's fine, it happened. Anyways, once inside, Lois basically stretches out, examining the interior and marveling over how successful and smart of a reporter she is for managing to get inside the restricted area of the inside of the rocket prior to launch. Now, she accidentally hits a little gadget, causing the rocket to fire up before its scheduled launch time, which is actually supposed to be in 2 days. So this is a really early launch. Superman once again uses Lois's mistake as an opportunity to teach her a lesson, which is also pretty awful once more. But Lois also probably cost that space exploration team tons of money. Like, space rocket launches are expensive, girl. What are you doing? Number 3. Tried to kill the Kents. In Blackest Night Superman, Lois Lane of Earth 2 was resurrected as a Black Lantern and was sent to kill the New Earth Kents. She wasn't successful, fortunately, and she wasn't the one pulling the strings behind this master plot, but this probably is one of the darkest things we've ever seen Lois do. In the end, she is one of the Lanterns to join up to take on the JSA. She ends up having to fight Power Girl, who to her was kind of like a daughter, so this is all pretty dark. Number 2. Earth 3. Everything the evil version of Lois Lane from Earth 3 does, is pretty dark. The Earth 3 version of Lois is the villainous hero, Superwoman. She has had multiple affairs and thoroughly enjoys using her lasso of submission to enslave those who oppose her, and even those who don't oppose her. She just likes enslaving people with a lasso. At one point when she is pregnant, she tries to convince both her partners Ultraman and Owlman that they were the father, manipulating them in order to turn them against one another. In reality, the baby wasn't even either of theirs, but was actually from a relationship she had with Alexander Luthor, who was technically the crime syndicate, her League of Villainous Heroes, enemy. Basically, this version of Lois is all about manipulating others in order to satisfy her own selfish desires. Number 1 was racist. Yeah, this story was bad. It comes to us from the issue of Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane 106, which honestly feels like it should be older based on its tone, but it's actually from 1970 if you can believe it. So this story is only 50 years old, and yeah, it's not good. And it also is not aged well at all. Lois is attempting to win a Pulitzer and wants to write about the plights of those living in the Little Africa borough of Metropolis. However, Lois finds no one in Little Africa is willing to talk with her because she is white. So she comes up with a way of getting around that. She asks Superman to use his Kryptonian tech, the Plastimold, to temporarily change the color of her skin, turning her black for the day. Yeah, and it's worse than you think, trust me. One of the worst parts of the story is when Lois asks Superman if he would still marry her if she remained black. Superman does not answer the question but follows it up instead with another question about if she's really asking him that question. An alien, a universal outsider. Is this supposed to be Superman basically saying yes without actually saying it, or is he just trying to avoid the question? Either way, it's not a good look for you, Superman. Lois also responds by calling Superman the right color. Wow, just a million times yikes. Definitely the darkest timeline here. This is like such a bad story.